say thank you, Ashe, so my ancestors can hear me. Good manners when I'm asking them to heal me. Life is like a clusterfuck of hornets, do you feel me? But sometimes time slows down and you can see the wings beating.
Blessings, fellow weird and wild ones. My name is Goddess, aka G, aka your friendly neighborhood witch. I'm a cinephile, kinkster, brat, and queen switch. Thank you for joining me on our way back to wholeness. This is our temple, our playground, our life, and our truths. For season 3, I will be talking with the fam about sacred sex, the sensuality and healing, and practicing healthy love. This work is for the collective from me, Brenda, and Kay. And there's a lot of magic that goes on behind the scenes. Find ways to support and practice reciprocity for all the dope folks on the show at the links below. Grab your toys, your potions, and your lotions, and let's reclaim our pleasure.
Tin Tiny Talks is a global, non-traditional artist in residency based in Portland, Oregon, that focuses on the Black, Indigenous, trans, gender non-conforming, two-spirit, and queer creative diaspora. How does it work? Each year, 10 artists are selected as artists in residency both from Oregon and from across the United States and beyond. These artists will complete commissions which will be presented during the 10 Tiny Talks Festival based in Portland, Oregon. Go to cravetheater.org for more information. That's CraveTheatre.org.
Kiam Marcelo Junio is a U.S. Navy veteran, certified health coach, and multimedia artist. Their mission is to assist creative thinkers and emerging leaders develop their strengths and care for their body, mind through positive psychology and sustainable self-care practices. Find out more at www.MahalHealingArts.com. Welcome, Kiam.
Hello, Goddess.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being on the first episode, actually, of season 3.
Yes.
Woo!
I love it. Bringing that Virgo energy.
Yes. Wait, you're Virgo?
I am a Virgo.
Yes, come through. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
So thank you for being on this episode. And so how we'll start is we'll just share our pronouns and race, ethnicity, and body, and then we'll do a quick check-in question. So I can start. My name's Goddess. I use he, she, they pronouns, and I am Black-bodied. How about you?
I am Kiam Marcelo Junio. Pronouns are they and them. And I am a Filipinx immigrant. Yes. Into this nation in this time that we're in.
Yeah. The times that we are in, listen.
Yes.
It is a whole thing. Thank you for that. So in this moment, where do you feel pleasure in your body, and where do you hope it is at the end of our time together?
Well, right now I feel pleasure in my feet because I'm standing up and I have this little grounding mat on my feet, and that feels really nice. And I also feel a lot of pleasure in my chest, in my heart, a lot of just excited, bubbling up energy. And I hope that by the end of this, that energy will be more all around my body and out into the world. Yes.
Yeah, I love that you said your feet. I just wasn't expecting that. That's so delicious. Right now, I'm actually feeling pleasure, in my heart center. I've felt some tightness when I woke up today, but I made myself some mullein and lavender tea. Yeah, and like seeing you, I feel like I'm settling into the space. And so that's where the pleasure is at. And by the end of this, just like you, I hope that like radiates outward. Yeah.
Yes.
More so.
There you go.
So I have been actually following your IG for quite some time. I recommend that everyone follow you. You're really authentic and insightful. So on your IG, you talk about what authentic self-care is and isn't. Can you share some of the differences and how it ties in with inner child work?
Sure. So, I conceptualized this idea of authentic self-care because I've noticed how a lot of hashtag self-care practices are really all about like, oh, bubble baths, oh, treat yourself, oh, I'm ignoring my diet today because I'm just gonna, live it up and whatever. Like kind of these really quick pleasure type of things, right? And we consider that, if we consider that self-care, like what really are we doing? Are we like self-caring or are we like escaping? Right? So that was kind of the initial question that I had. And where authenticity comes for me is authenticity is about honesty. And so if we really want to be honest about self-care, then really isn't it about really understanding who we are and tuning in from an inner perspective rather than an outwards trying to fulfill the inner? Like, how about if we begin from the inside, right? And begin through caring for ourselves from the inside and then have that manifest externally. So that was kind of the thought process that that went into that, to really define that for myself. So the way that I can conceptualize and practice authentic self-care, of course, which varies person to person, but for me, is really about self-compassion, right? Um, Being rooted in a sense of your own value, your worth, being on your own side, and of course seeing yourself as more than your limitations, and feeling yourself as part of a greater whole that you're connected to, that you belong to, right? So if we look at self-care then from that angle, right, of reminding myself this, not needing to escape or to soothe myself from the pain of the external world, but to really return to my internal power. What are the self-care practices that help me return to my own power? That's what authentic self-care is to me.
Oh, okay, sorry. Like, I should have split this question up because I want to pause for a second and just kind of savor that for a bit, because as you were talking about this and like really like how do we make it real and plant roots, I just thought about like sustainability with in terms of like how do I practice self-care that isn't just like in the moment, but like plants roots that really help like create a foundation for me to like stand on. And so I
That you
really
can return
appreciate.
to. Yes.
Yes, return to it. There's something so beautiful about that. I'm in tantra school right now, and Debbie Ward talks about like the difference between like gratification and like pleasure. And so like gratification is that quick,
Okay.
like it's not the things that like in the long run might be of the in your embetterment or like for you.
Right.
So that's that really. Thank you
It's
for saying that. I really appreciate it.
yes. Well, and it makes sense. We do this. I also don't want to say that like, oh, we should never like give into urges, or like that's all well and good
Yes.
too. We do need we do need those temporary soothing mechanisms, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I do think they go together, right? Um, so returning to that term of like authentic, like is it inauthentic then to just to care for yourself in more shallow ways? Maybe maybe different terms are necessary to
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think this goes along with what we'll talk about next with is inner child work, but like
Mm.
that when we like so say I really want ice cream and I'm lactose intolerant, but sometimes I have a
Mm.
craving, like I'm listening to
Same.
my inner child and giving them what they need in that
Yeah,
moment. And
yeah.
I think that's kind of a part of reparenting is allowing ourselves to kind of have those moments of like, yeah, go get that, do
Mm-hmm.
that.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's when it becomes like if I'm having ice cream for all my meals for
Mm.
the day, I'm gonna feel that. Like I'm gonna
Yeah.
feel that. And so that I think there's a difference there. So yeah, it's not about shaming when we indulge. I think indulgence is
Right.
delicious.
Yes. It's part of
Yeah.
pleasure.
Yes, it's part of pleasure. I love that. Yes. But there is a difference. And I think that if we nourish both and find the like interplay between them both,
Mm-hmm.
that's where the foundational pieces can start. So yeah,
Right.
let's go into inner child work. So how does
Mm.
that authentic self-care tie in with inner child work?
Authentic self care being all about self compassion to me, that definitely is the basis for really kind of almost the gate to really getting to know your inner child, right? You have to um, first want to do it, right? And be willing to face yourself and be willing to go back there, right? Because we grow up and we consider that like, oh, the past is the past and that's gone. Well, we're still walking forward with all of those thoughts, all of those memories, all of those neural pathways and patterns and ways of seeing ourselves. We're carrying all that, right? And we have to be compassionate enough for ourselves to trust that I've got this, that I can do this, I can heal my inner child, I can face all of the pain that I've been running away from. I'm capable now of holding the pain of that child, and I now have the resources to manage, myself, us, out of this kind of forest, dark forest, dark, scary forest, right? Which is how kind of the child sees it, right? Um,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's that that like I'm able to hold this, like I am ready for this, and
mhm.
developing those tools. I think that how you're talking about authentic self-care are those tools of like,
Exactly.
yes,
Yes,
okay, see, it's
yes,
come a full circle.
yes.
Yeah, I
And
can so see that.
it comes from so many places. This is the thing that I've learned from my healing journey, is that you know um, it comes from many places. It comes from many people. It comes from many sources. Many different reflections tell you like, oh, try this. Oh, try this. We learn from everyone we meet. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like it takes a village. It's
Yeah.
like all that lived wisdom, um, and different capacities to care is really important to have
Mhm.
in our lives. It does take some time to develop, but it's well worth the journey.
Yeah. I
Um,
think it takes a lot of time to develop the trust
mm,
that's there for you. You know, like I've begun to believe that like if something is in front of you, it's for you. It's a part of your experience, right? But a lot of us kind of close ourselves off, like, oh, I see that over there, but that's not for me. That's for someone else because I'm not that type of person.
mm,
I guess where this ties into to inner child healing is that inner child thinks they're everybody. The inner child thinks they can be anyone and anything, and be at any time in history, any type of form. Like that's who we are at the core, right? As creative beings, and that's also our unlimited potential.
To savor that for a second, because
Mm-hmm.
when you say it, I think about mm, the work I do with my therapist in EMDR, and just like what comes up naturally for me in terms of like imagery,
Mm.
and I really enjoy bringing in the play with that,
Mm.
and I
Mm-hmm.
know it's not for everyone, but um,
Mm.
when I can bring in a sense of curiosity that's playful, that's my inner child. When I'm doing really deep work, it
Yeah.
makes it easier for me to like step into those sticky, icky um, conversations and thoughts, because I know that I am able to be anything.
Yes.
I can reshape this and form this. And make something different. And so I'm so grateful for my
Mm.
inner child,
Yeah.
that it's still with me. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Wow.
that's so beautiful. Thank you for that was yes, that was needed. This
Thank
conversation.
you. I'm so
Um,
curious about your inner child now, actually.
oh my god.
Yeah, like I'm just really curious. Like, can you give us an image of like something that you used to love doing,
Mhm.
helped you to, yeah, be present, be centered?
Yeah, so I used to love to make houses for myself out of sticks, and I would take the like wild clovers and things from the garden and paint pots and put them into pots. And so, really tending to a wild home was.
Mm-hmm.
It was so peaceful to me, and allowed my creativity to blossom. And so I bring that into my day-to-day life with how I care for my home now, like the flowers that I appreciate in my home
Wow.
and loving them. And it brings me peace, and it's a routine that is a part of that like authentic self-care that's like really
Yeah.
builds foundation for me and my inner child. Like, they love it, and then we go get ice cream.
There is it.
Yeah, yeah. How about you? Like, what about your inner child?
It's so funny that you're talking about like home, like the sense of home, right? Because my image from my childhood was making little mud pies. Yeah, I would mix water and literally just water and dirt and just pour little pancakes for the sun to dry. Like that was just my favorite thing. I was pouring little things. Yeah, this was in the Philippines, so I was like on the dirt all day.
That's what's up. Oh my gosh. Do you enjoy pancakes now? Like the
I
process?
don't necessarily actually, but crepes maybe crepes.
Oh, crepes. Okay, now we're getting fancy. Glow up though. Glow up.
Pleasure.
Yes, exactly.
Love it.
So, can you share more about how um, the pleasure you felt in your body as you started practicing this authentic self-care
Hmm.
and doing inner child work?
Yeah. The best way I can describe it is with the breath. The breath opens up, it slows down, and I feel a greater amount of space to take in more air and to hold that air in my body. Feel more capacious. I feel like my airway is relaxed. I feel like I can speak louder. I feel like I can, when I speak, it's rooted to my diaphragm and rooted into the ground. Um, yeah, the greater self compassion, greater self awareness also leads to greater body awareness, somatic self awareness, right? Um, as I've been on this journey, I've been noticing, for instance, like how different the sides of my body are, right? How my right hand is so can do so many things and my left feels so clumsy, right? And beginning to do more things with my left side. And really and like begin to involve this side of my body in more of my daily activities, like opening up more parts of myself, understanding, being more curious about why I think the way I think, why I do the things I do, why other people do the things they do. Just greater curiosity in general, greater compassion, more openness, softening, being more present, just greater body sensations. Yeah, that's how that has felt.
Yeah, I know people can't see you right now, but like you're opening up your arms and like, taking up more space energetically.
Yes.
And when you talk about breath, that's such a part of like that capacity to like really use all of our rib cage and
Mm-hmm.
our respiratory system, which right
Mm-hmm.
now, with COVID and it just like being on attack right now for so many of us,
Yes.
there's this energy of like when we are aware of our breath, we can feel how much space we can take up.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's beautiful. And like the capacity to also like rest in that
Mm-hmm.
and it's that agility with it. That's beautiful. Yeah. And then when you were talking about like noticing the difference between, your two sides and starting to, you like practice with your left side more. I think that applies too to like you said, like noticing how we interact with other people and how we, um, you know, react to our day-to-day lives and what triggers us. It allows us that capacity to play and be curious about it, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
That's yeah.
Well, it slows down the response because very, very often we have automatic responses to things based on our conditioning, right? But when we develop mindfulness, we build in a little bit more space before we respond. And when we respond, we do it more mindfully, more connected to what really is versus what we might be projecting in that moment.
So, okay, so now I'm thinking about in terms of like inner child work with that. Do you think that that's a part of like caring for the inner child? Is that like pause in between? Because you know how when we're little, we can go from one emotion to the next like really quickly
Yes,
and like
yes,
kind of
yes,
shake things off like pretty
yes,
well. There's like things that obviously get embedded into us, but
yes.
like do you think that there's like kind of this reparenting that happens with that mindfulness?
Most definitely. My mind though went towards something that came up in one of my group coaching sessions recently. Is a part of reparenting the inner child is also letting them see how, bringing them into the present moment, and then letting them see how. Okay, so what as we grow up, right? As children, I guess as you were saying, like we feel all these different emotions, and we learn from adults that things then become permanent, and things and that there are rules and there are ways of being and ways of not being, right? And so and laws like un you know unchangeable and hard laws, right? And what happens is as we grow up, we experience things and we don't have the complete information, but we form a decision, we form a judgment, we form a law of how to be and how not to be based on that particular experience. And part of reparenting the inner child is bringing them into the now and letting them see, sitting with them, sitting with yourself, really, right? And letting yourself see that when you made these judgments about the world, judgments about other people, judgments about yourself at those moments, you had incomplete information. And now there's more. There's more to take in. There's more to consider. And that belief can now be disentangled from all of that emotional energy that was packed in that moment.
because then I'm like, that goes back to the imagination part, right? And the play part. Like I'm just imagining like sitting down with little G and just being like, let's pause in this moment and see more, and then imagine more.
Imagine
Like,
more.
yes, it's like your inner child and your adult self are like working together on processing things.
Yes,
Oh, I just got goosebumps. That is that's wonderful. Okay. Okay, so this is like the really juicy part of our conversation. So why do you think Western society has built such a huge chasm between healthy sexual lifestyle and listening to our inner child? Because I find that when I started doing inner child work, I felt really uncomfortable with, like, I had to get two different therapists, for like a sex therapist and then like one to do EMDR with. And then, like, as I got deeper into it, I'm like, oh no, these need to combine. And so why do you think there's like this, and I think that's there for a lot of us. We don't want to talk about like sex and living as a child.
Yeah. I mean, I see that definitely. That I see that, but I'm also feel similarly. Like those things are inherently combined. We were all children at one point, and we are all still children to some degree inside, and we are also sexual, physical, pulsating beings.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
So it makes absolutely no sense to separate those things for me. But what I see, what I've observed, and what I've had to decondition myself from, and to compassionately observe rather than judge, is really patriarchy and capitalism, right? The combination of those two forces are both very disembodied ways of disembodying, of separating good from bad, separating the body from the soul, separating the haves with the have-nots, separating the sacred from the profane. It's all about those practices, and these systems, ways of being, are inherently that.
Yeah.
From my observation, I mean, someone else can, we can. I think there's room there to make that more complex, but
right, because it's not just when you separate those things, it's the soul loss, really. And like our sexual energy isn't just for like the active sex, it's creative energy, which is so tied in with our inner child. Like our inner child knows what's like automatically like pleasing to us and loves to be in that realm. So how, like, what have you found helps to start to mend that bridge between that like creative pleasure energy and inner child work?
Definitely, if we're looking at these practices as very disembodying, right, then I think the key is using polarity in this way. The other side would then be to be embodied, right, and to feel embodied, and the counter to patriarchy. What does that look like? And the counter to capitalism and work culture, what does that look like? And how can you begin to feel that here and now through the body?
I appreciate that question because when I think about it, I think about rest. I think about stillness, and I also think about like play for the sake of play. You know, yeah. What does it look like for you?
Similar. A lot of rest, a lot of time with family, being cared for, feeling safe. And I think that can coexist with capitalism in that way if we learn how to balance and how to look at the bigger picture. Like, it's a little bit of a tangent, but something that I've been thinking a lot about recently is how in the past I have conflated money with capitalism. Money as a force has existed before capitalism. Capitalism is a fairly new development that's really rooted from colonialism, right? And that type of practice then leading into like business and technological practices that disembody and ravage the world and cultures. Where am I going to with this?
I know those tangents will take.
Yeah,
So you were saying how money isn't inherently like just about like capitalism.
Okay, I guess so. So tying that then into how do we begin to visualize a world in which we are embodied and we are using money in ways that enrich everybody? And is that inherently an anti-capitalist? Is that then an anti-capitalist system? Is that a new version of capitalism? Like, what does that look like? I think we need to reckon. Okay, I guess we're getting real. We need to reckon with, we're reckoning now with patriarchy. Like, we see that, right? I think we need to reckon with our relationship with capitalism outside of saying capitalism equals bad. Like, how are we actually living in capitalism as products of capitalism? And where is then our responsibility in changing these systems? I think these are the questions that are now that I'm now facing, and that I'm with more self-compassion, without that self-blame of like, oh, I'm a capitalist, I'm bad, like, oh, I'm profiting from the work of people in developing countries, and I'm a terrible person. Like, we're beyond that now. We're looking at complexity and how these systems intersect and impact one another, right? So yeah, these are just questions that I have, and I'm learning how this then ties to self-care, self-support, community, growth. Yeah.
Yeah, because it goes back to like, that process of like sitting down with your inner child and saying like, these are like, this is what you thought of it. Like, you're going like immediately to like, I'm a bad person, like capitalism is bad. And like in the stillness, in that moment of rest, and I think there's like a whole thing within like polyvagal theory about this, but like when we're at like rest, like we are able to create.
Yes.
Like, and so I'm thinking about like redistribution of wealth, when I am at rest, and like how to like flip the script on what we consider like productive or our day-to-day life. Like, do I want to live to work? Like, and so, and I'm able to do that in moments where I am like not involved in like this disembodied grind culture.
Mm.
And then I'm able to take those ideas and share them with my community and see how they like develop from there. And so
Yeah.
I definitely see what you're saying, like opening ourselves up to those questions, and being curious, and not going immediately to wanting to shame ourselves,
Yeah.
because that shame, when we when we when we place shame on ourselves, we shut down.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We build these walls, we want
Right.
to ignore it. Um, and and there's definitely other pathways.
Right.
There's
Right.
other pathways.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So as we were talking about, we are all beings who came from a creative process,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, and have the capacity to create or be generative. So, what are some tips you have for folks who are and aren't sexually active to nourish their generative power?
Mm. um, I would say turning on your senses and really paying attention to how the things that you see, how the world, when it enters your inner world, what that does to you, how that moves you, how that changes how you stand, how you sit, how you feel, how you breathe, and doing that with all of your senses, your sight, your smell, your touch, your taste, your hearing. Right, we're being fed pleasure 24/7 if we really allow ourselves to absorb it, right? So
Yeah.
that's one part of it, right? Is that allowing the external to affect you, to immerse yourself in the external, right? And then there's also an inner outer kind of pathway here where, rather than waiting for, a lot of us kind of wait for pleasure to come to us and to feel like, oh, the world must stimulate me, right? There's also a way of beginning from the inside and saying, I'm going to stimulate the world and see how it responds. So going from the inside out, right? So now, rather than touch just being about temperature and pressure, now touch can also be about the intention of the touch that you give to others, the softness of your walk, you know, how you take up space,
Yeah.
how you sit, which side do you sit on, figuring it out. Yeah, there are so many ways to. I think creative power is a lot of creative power is about choice, and when you realize how much choice you have in just how you hold your body, that in itself is, a manifestation of your creative power.
That's so true. You're inviting us to presence, first off, like, with like allowing our senses to be aware of them, like I'm like, even in the small things, like, how do you make your tea or coffee in the morning, and like, are you aware of like the heat that your
Mm-hmm.
fingertips feel, and the
Yeah.
sound that the liquid makes as it pours into the cup? Like,
Mm-hmm.
when you hold it to your nose, do you fully breathe in the aromas? There's
Mm-hmm.
that's so sensual and can
Yeah.
give us so like simple pleasures that I think that
Yes.
it's easy to like run through and like and not notice, because we're trying to get somewhere or produce something, which goes back to like patriarchy and like wanting like results and productivity and
Yes.
so that slowing down, and then the invitation to be a mirror as to like what you want, like creating the mirror, as to what you want to feel, and like being curious about pleasure and creating it. Like, how do you, and that reminds me of, going back to inner child, like, how do you feed your inner child? Like, maybe not, someone else is not going to bring you ice cream. My partner might not bring me ice cream. I'm going to go get the ice cream. I'm really stuck on ice cream today. I think I need to go get some ice cream.
Feel that. Same with cookies.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But, okay. Thank you for that. Yeah, there's such pleasure in the senses. And I think that those can inspire us too. Sorry, what were you gonna say?
Repeating your question, I was a little I don't know if I fully grasped the next question.
Oh, are you talking about the one about
your child?
I haven't gone to a new one outside of the tips you have for folks who are. Okay. I was about to though. So you must have sensed
I thought you
it
mentioned
coming.
like tips or your inner about the inner child. We were beginning to talk about the inner child again. That's why.
Oh yeah. I was just like tying it back to what you were saying before about like it being like inner child, and now I'm blanking. But I was just tying to what you said before. But anyway,
I haven't had my coffee. Forgot about that little ritual this morning.
Oh goodness, yeah, I'm probably gonna need something. So what are speaking of rituals? What are some rituals you are currently doing to celebrate and listen to your inner child?
During the springtime especially, and even now, and really just on my daily walks, I love stopping by flowers and just really appreciating them and talking to them like, oh my gosh, you're so beautiful, thank you for blooming. I really love doing this, especially in the spring when the peonies were out. I love peonies. So beautiful. Just universes exploding right in front of you. And they only bloom for 1 week out of the whole year. And I'm glad that I really took the time this year to be out there every day appreciating the peonies. Yeah, so little things like that. A lot of things on my daily walks. I talk to the squirrels through my head, like, oh, or birds even. Like if there's a gathering of birds, I'll say I'll send out this thought of the image of the path that I'm gonna take, so that they know that I'm not there to bother them, but I'm just gonna pass through this way. And they react accordingly. Actually, like they don't move, they don't get scared, they allow me to pass through. So things like that, just little ways to remind myself that I'm alive, I'm present, and I'm connected to what I see all around me right now. There's an ongoing conversation that's happening with everything. Yes.
Yeah, and I think the birds and flowers appreciate that you take the time to say hello and give gratitude.
How about you? I'd love to know what some of the rituals you do with your inner child.
Yeah. So actually similar. Taking the time to, when I'm walking with my dog Max, really appreciate the greenery and the grass. Like the other day, I took off my shoes and just walked, and it was raining, and to feel like, the wetness and the rocks and sticks underneath my feet, and feeling that connection, and not being embarrassed, or even when I'm embarrassed, doing it anyway, of like talking to my plants, and the plants around me, like you were saying, and also dancing and singing when it comes into my heart to do so.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm finding that I still, like, sometimes I'm like, is anyone listening? But I try to do it anyway. and hopefully it just starts happening eventually, just naturally, because I did it all the time when I was younger.
Life was a
Yeah,
musical.
yeah. Life really was. So,
Um,
how have you noticed that this has enhanced your sense of pleasure?
I feel more capacious. I feel
Mm,
more able to access different types of pleasure. Um, I'm just so much kinder to myself. That's really, I think, the most impactful thing. The way that I talk to myself is so much more self-supportive now than it was, years ago. um,
yeah.
and I feel I have stronger boundaries with how I manage my energy, my time, my attention, my presence. I know when to say no. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a key one, is learning, like, knowing when to say no. Um, and not because something is like you were saying, I think before, and alluding at, is like when it's like from a place of unworthiness, like, no, this isn't for me, but like, no, this literally just does not align
Yeah.
with with what I want. Yeah, I find that there's just this delicious slowness that has come, where I don't feel like I need to rush things, and when I do feel that way, it's really visceral. Like, I know the difference.
Mm.
Um, and that slowness has caused me to set those boundaries and be like, nope,
Mm-hmm.
this just doesn't align. So
Yeah.
yeah.
You you become so close to that feeling of support and love and safety for yourself that um, you want to protect that, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's yeah. What I'm thinking through now is healing the inner child and protecting the inner child by protecting that inner light and knowing what feeds that creative energy and what takes away from it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Hmm.
I want to
I
go
think I
back to if you don't mind. I want to go back to
yeah.
that image of that you shared of standing out in the rain with your feet on wet earth, right? Because there's something there about embracing something that other people might consider like, oh, that's unpleasurable. I don't want to be out with my feet on the wet. I don't want, I don't want to be muddy and blah blah blah. We think about like pleasure and displeasure, right? But when it's that something like that is so simple, and you can take pleasure in just standing out with your feet wet on the ground, right?
Hmm.
So I guess what I'm pointing at is how things, when we label them as displeasure or bad, wrong, to open ourselves up to experiencing them in small ways where we remove that charge of negative and positive and experience it simply as another thing to experience in the world.
Hmm.
And that's what your image of what you were sharing like really made me think about.
Hmm. So like, are you pointing to kind of how that initial reaction of maybe like displeasure or like disgust might be rooted in like mm, narratives of what's respectable to do, rather than like being present for the actual sensation?
Right, exactly. And when we remove ourselves from these rules and structures of, you know, duality as morality, that's what it is, duality as morality.
Mm,
When we remove ourselves from that, we open up to so much more of what's present and available to us.
oof,
Yeah.
That's the first time I've heard duality as morality, and I really need to sit with that.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Mm. So you've given us so much to kind of digest and to
Mm.
think about, and maybe even have a little conversation with our inner child about. So, who are some of the beings and ideas that inspire your practice and pleasure?
I love this question so much, and it like fills me up because someone who has been so important for me growing up was Aaliyah. And recently her whole discography is being re-released on streaming for the first time in 20 years.
Yeah.
So it's quite a momentous occasion as an Aaliyah fan growing up. Seeing, her videos are now available on HD. So it's an exciting time as a fan. And I was a fan as a child of Aaliyah because she modeled for me this really beautiful way of existing through duality. She was both hard and soft. She was both masculine and feminine. She was both graceful and, with a little rough edge, and she navigated the world and expressed her spirit so beautifully and so gracefully. And that has always been my model. Of like, wow, this is like I can live fully like that. I can be both masculine and feminine. I can be both kind and have my boundaries, And I think for a lot of my like early adult life, I was pulled away from that, thinking that that was inaccessible. And more now, as her work is resurfacing, I'm also in a parallel way coming into terms with the complexity and the beauty of who I am. And I'm just so grateful for her presence in this world and how she has affected my life, and so many other people.
Yeah. Yes, I am just picturing you dancing and so happy with your inner child to some Aaliyah, and it's a whole vibe.
Yes, yes. You sing a lot with her. Yeah.
Mm.
Harmonize.
Yeah. Okay. Well, how about your offerings and work? First of all, like
Yes.
how can like we find you
Yeah.
and tell us about what you're currently offering and the work you're doing?
Thank you for that. You can find me at I am Kiam on Instagram. So that's mostly where I do the bulk of my work. Although I'm now also approaching LinkedIn and YouTube to just to round out my content and to have things connect to one another a little bit more. But my website definitely has a lot of content, and my Instagram are the two main places. And I'm currently in this space where I'm clarifying my offerings, where the first thing would be like a 3-session introduction, 3-session coaching package for people where we can just really get to know each other. And then based on how that goes, then you can do like a 3-month, a 6-month, or a 12-month package working together based on the type of goal that you have and what we're working towards and your timeline. And I also have, I'm also designing some new programs. One is on imposter syndrome and healing imposter syndrome through mindfulness, and also creating a shadow workbook that'll be out soon as well. Yeah, that I'm really excited about. Yeah.
I am so excited for the shadow workbook. I cannot wait. And it
So
sounds like, yeah, it's your offerings are going to be more customizable after those 3 sessions. Like, it's
yes,
really adapted to the person's needs.
exactly. Yeah.
Hmm. All right. Well, that's awesome. I am so excited for this shadow workbook and all your new offerings.
Thank
And I
you.
know other folks are going to be excited too once they hear this podcast
Yes.
episode.
Ah.
Um, and as we say goodbye, where do you feel pleasure in your body now? And what
Oh,
is your heart carrying with you into this great big wild?
oh my gosh, I do feel more present, outside of my body. I feel like my skin is really warm right now. Um, yeah, my eyes feel bright. Yeah, I just feel very, very present and ready to go out into the world. Yes.
Mm,
Thank
yeah,
you
I
so
like.
much.
Yeah, thank you. I love that you said like your eyes feel bright. I'm like, whoa, that's awesome. um, yeah, I feel just like invigorated. Like I was very calm when we started this call, and now I'm just like
Mhm.
I feel energized in a really nice way, and I don't know how that's going to play. But I'm carrying into this big wild just the conversation that you're inviting with our inner child and how like the inner child and our adult selves can work together to really be a whole person. um I'm resting in that and just so excited to see how that plays out now that I've heard more of your words of wisdom. So thank you so much for being on this podcast, and I am just so excited to watch as you grow and as more people hear about your work and blossom with you.
Thank you so much, Goddess, for this beautiful opportunity, this conversation. I will see you out there.
That's it, y'all. That's our show. Big thank you to Cloud Stokely for providing their song Lo-Fi Beats to contemplate YT supremacy on season 3. Your music is a whole vibe, fam. And thank you for your continued support, y'all. Keep pleasuring yourselves.
Tin Tiny Talks is a global, non-traditional artist in residency based in the Northwest, focusing on the Black, Indigenous, trans, gender non-conforming, two-spirit, and queer creatives. We'd like to congratulate our 2021 recipients: Belinda Rose, AC Ramirez de Arellano, Kareem Jackson, Cloud Stokely, Calisto Nanan, D&D Productions, Nick Laponte, Zinni Opio, Marla Darling, and Mixdalia de Lubel. You are the definition of excellence. Go to cravetheater.org to meet the artists.